The world of cheese is very exciting at the moment, Rob. We've got, about 2 years ago, the laws were slightly relaxed on unpasteurised cheese coming into New Zealand, and they've just been relaxed again. There was a directive set up between Australia and Australia, New Zealand and some of the European countries, basically to say we wanted to bring more unpasteurised cheese into the country. Therefore, the New Zealand producers were saying, well, if you can bring it in, we need to be allowed to make it here as well. So the New Zealand consumer is about to have huge access to a lot of different styles of unpasteurised cheese. And everybody says, oh, what's the big buzz about unpasteurised cheese? And really, it's flavour. There's an incredible amount of flavour that gets kept in an unpasteurised cheese, that during that pasteurisation process, it just disappears. And it affects the taste and the flavour of the cheese. It affects the creaminess in the cheese as well. And if you ever have the opportunity, if somebody ever says to you, this is an unpasteurised cheese, if you can, taste it next to a pasteurised cheese of the same variety, and they're worlds apart. Absolutely worlds apart.
So you won't ever go back?
I wouldn't say I wouldn't ever go back, because it's not always readily available. But if you have the chance to buy unpasteurised or to taste unpasteurised, it is superior in flavour, in the texture, and sometimes it's even younger than the pasteurised cheeses that we're eating. But you imagine, we talk about having a good aged cheese, and that could be a really good aged, cheddar, and you can take a really good aged cheddar against a younger unpasteurised cheese, and that young unpasteurised cheese will have a whole lot more flavour. Lots more flavour.
Does it change the texture?
It does. When I've tasted, for example, an unpasteurised brie from France against a pasteurised brie, it's just much more creamy. It's more silken. The texture is more silken. So if if you've got that palate and you like those beautiful white bloomy mould cheeses, it's very, very creamy. There's no sort of ammonia-ness or anything like that, which sometimes is an indication of an old cheese or something that's past its prime. When it comes to the aged cheeses or the harder style cheeses, you get these beautiful crystals forming in the cheese, and that's a sign of a good cheese as well. So you get these slightly little crunchy bits in the cheese, and these are just sort of poppets of flavour in your mouth, and that's where you suddenly go, oh, that's good cheese. It's that sort of thing that makes the difference between really good cheese and everyday cheese.
So are you suggesting that New Zealand manufacturers will be able to use unpasteurised milk?
Interestingly enough, we've spoken to some of the artisan producers. That's the first question that we wanted to ask them. Will you make unpasteurised? There's a lot involved for a dairy to be able to do an unpasteurised production. It means setting up a whole new facility. They can't use the facilities where they've used pasteurised milk through it. It's a bit like somebody's got allergies almost. You don't want any cross-contamination. Talking to Sue Arthur and Neil Willman from Over the Moon Cheese Company in Patauru, they were here on the weekend, and it would mean a whole new facility for them. It also means that anybody making unpasteurised cheese has to be near the milk source. The longer you truck the milk, or the more distance the milk has to be transported, the bigger chances you've got to pasteurise it to make it safe to be able to turn into cheese. So really it's only those artisan producers where there's a herd, or a flock close by, that they're going to be able to make unpasteurised cheese. You will find, it's now legal in New Zealand that you can go and buy raw milk from a farm gate up to 5 litres per person every day. So potentially, I think what we're going to find is people may want to make cheese at home themselves, and they will make it unpasteurised. So they'll start as a very small production, and who knows what's happened from there. Sue Arthur, that's how she got into cheese making. She had a go at making it herself, and now she's got a company.
Tell me a wee bit about New Zealand cheeses. Do we stack up against the rest of the world?
I think it's funny, the rest of the world, particularly Europe, made cheese out of necessity. They had cows needing to be milked. There wasn't necessarily the avenue to get rid of the milk or sell the milk. Obviously, there wasn't big milk plants anywhere. So they turned it into cheese, or they turned it into butter. And so from there, I think New Zealand didn't necessarily make cheese out of necessity. I think we make it out of excitement and wanting to try new things. And so our cheeses, it's a really nice thing to say, they're quite different to the European cheeses. Like our wine, we make New World cheeses. And so we have a go at a few different things. We have one here from Caracas, which is North Canterbury, called Frisian. cheese. Now it's not freezing because it's necessary from freezing cows, but it's actually a Gouda-style cheese, and rather than just put cumin seeds in it, they've also put cloves. Now that wouldn't necessarily be the norm in Europe, but here it works with our palates and what we like. For example, Over the Moon Cheese Company have produced a cheese that has both buffalo milk in it and sheep milk in it, so it's a combination. You wouldn't find that in Europe because the buffalo herds are in southern Europe, the sheep herds are in, or northern Italy. And so what you find is they wouldn't be combining because they've got to truck it. Whereas here in New Zealand, there will be a herd of milking buffalo, and not far away there's probably a herd of milking sheep. So we can do it. And so I think our New Zealand cheeses, we need to look at them and go, these are New Zealand cheeses, and be proud of it. Fair enough, they are still based on the European style of making cheese. There's no new cheese recipes. We're all just using the same recipes. But we put a distinctive New Zealand mark on it these days, I think.
What about the cost? It's a very big subject.
Cost is a funny cost, and I hate, I dislike when people say, oh, that's really expensive, and you want to redefine what that word expensive means. Doesn't mean that you just can't afford it at the moment. It's not in your budget, therefore it's not expensive, it's just not affordable for you. Because what a lot of people forget is there's a lot of milk goes into a block of cheese. You take a traditional Italian Parmigiano, which when it's a finished wheel of cheese is 40 kilos. But there's actually 120 litres of milk, or 120 kilos of milk went into that 40 kilo cheese. Okay, so 3 times the amount of milk to make a block of cheese. So if you said that, your good old Kiwi block of cheddar could be 3 kilos or 3 litres worth of milk to start off with. So suddenly you add that up. You then add to it the fact that it needs to go through a process, it needs to age, and this is what adds quite a bit of the cost or expense onto it, is that chance to sit and mature. And I suspect that everybody in New Zealand has had cheese that's never been fully matured. It's sort of dry, particularly in the brie style cheeses, it's quite dry, it's very firm, it's not that soft creamy cheese, and that's literally because the producers, they need a return, and so it may be that they sell their cheese prior to it being ripe. Otherwise they'd need to sit on it for another 3 months, and that's no money in their pocket. So often people go, oh, that's expensive, but what you want to look at is, look at what the cheese is. Has it been properly ripened, or is it ripe, or is it a very young cheese that somebody's chopped up and just pushed out through the bulk market? Does it come from an artisan producer? Can you go and talk to that producer, or can you talk to the store owner that's got the cheese for sale, and can they tell you a story about it? Because I think that's where New Zealanders are looking a lot more at their food these days. They want to know not just the pretty packaging that it's in, they want to know where it's come from, what the cows are eating, or what the sheep are eating, or where the goats live, and things like that. And they want to know the process that's gone through that. They want to know whether it's been a good year or a bad year. We are getting a lot more involved in our food these days.